Hey everybody, Drew here. Thank you for tuning in. This week we are going to interview Pastor and Chaplain Sharon McQueary about women and leadership. So make sure to tune in and let's learn together today. Hey everybody, this is Drew and welcome to the Tattooed Chap. Today I'm going to be interviewing Sharon McQueary, who is an Army chaplain in the Army Reserves, and we met in the Chaplain Bullock or the Chaplain Basic Officer Leader course. We went through it together, and today I'm going to be talking to her about women and leadership. So make sure to tune in to kind of see what we're going to talk about and how you can be a part of this discussion. One thing I want to throw out before we get started though, with both of us being Army soldiers and chaplains, the stuff that we talk about today is really just our own opinions and don't necessarily reflect the values or just what the Army says. This is really just a conversation between two friends, and we wanted to invite you into this conversation. So I could keep rambling, but Sharon, maybe could you share a little bit about yourself, who you are, like what are your hobbies and interests, where are you at right now, and so on and so forth.
Awesome. So I'm Sharon, and I'm from Toledo, Ohio, born and raised. Always, there's an argument about whether or not we're really truly Midwest. We would call ourselves Midwest, but we're probably not. We're in Eastern time. So so this is where I'm from. I'm on the civilian side, I'm a senior pastor of a small organic church here in a suburb called Oregon, Ohio. That church is called Fireside. And on the Army side, I'm a reserve battalion chaplain, and my unit is the 814th Transportation Battalion out in Boise, Idaho. So the reason I tell you all that is because one of my hobbies is traveling. So I love to, although I've been born and raised where I'm at and where I'm sitting, I love to explore and get outside and be adventurous. So that's one of my hobbies. I'm married. I've been married for 22 years. Okay. We have 3 children. Our oldest is 23. Don't do the math. The oldest is 23, and she's getting ready to start law school. Oh, and wow. I have a 16-year-old who's going to start her senior year in high school, and a 14-year-old who's going to be a freshman. So we're coming to the end of residential parenting.
I like that term, residential.
Yeah, I just came up with it. I make it. So we're coming to the end of our residential parenting period, and so that's just kind of who we are. Some of my other interests and hobbies. Let's see. I love fitness. So you'll see me working out. You'll get sick of it. Don't worry. What else do you want to know about me, Drew?
So this is the funny thing. I was wondering what you're going to say when it came to fitness, because what kind of fitness do you do?
I CrossFit.
CrossFit, yeah. And it's always on.
I didn't lead, but I'm sorry. Rewind. My name is Sharon, and I CrossFit.
Yeah, like that's the whole the joke is, when are they going to mention it? And you didn't mention it, so I'm proud of you.
So. I have not been doing that for very long, only about a year, and I've learned already that people, if you mention that you do CrossFit, people get kind of nasty.
I know.
Like, ew, you're one of them. So I guess the only other thing I should tell you about myself right out the gate is that my internet persona is handle is Shut Up Sharon. So the reason I'm going to tell you about it is because I think it'll tell people a little bit about who I am. So the reason I came up with Shut Up Sharon is I was sitting and having a woman was interviewing me. She's writing a book about women in leadership and the stories of women. And we had a very long, 4-hour conversation. She wrote my story in her book, right? And as we got done with it, we came up with the idea that I should start a blog called Shut Up Sharon, because when you talk to me, you're either going to be like Princess Diaries, like, shut up, say it ain't so. Or you're going to be like, oh my God, will you just shut up? One of the two. So I have, my Instagram and my YouTube channel are all under Shut Up Sharon. And so that's kind of who I am.
Well, I think I'm kind of more the first person, just kind of, I think anyone that knows you and kind of knows some of the stories, and we might talk about some of them in the interview, uh, would recognize that you are a very unique person and you've done some things that you only kind of hear about and you typically don't see, at least in my world. And like, you've done some pretty cool things and done some pretty interesting things. And yeah, so one of the things why I brought you here is to actually kind of talk about some of that stuff. I didn't even know that you had been interviewed for a book and all that stuff. So that's pretty interesting. We'll have to put a link for the book in there. Is it published yet? No?
It is. It is.
Okay.
But it's
No.
on.
Okay. But when I met you, it was about 2.5 years ago when we first met. We were in the same small group in our chaplain basic officer leader course at Fort Jackson. And you and I would hang out outside of work and go do some runs and things like that. Some of in the community, I think we did 2 or 3 of them. And while we were doing that stuff, I got to hear a lot of your story. Like one of those things is that you were a surrogate mother for someone. Was it once or twice? But once. Yeah. So you carried someone else's baby for them, which we don't really have time to go into detail with that, but like you hear about that, but you just don't like meet people that have done that. And I think that speaks a lot to who you are as a person when it comes to like loving others and compassionate for others. You bore a great burden, and I'm sure that there's things that came out of it that are benefit for you and emotionally and mentally and all that stuff. But really, you bore a cross for somebody that couldn't, and I think that speaks a lot to who you are as a person and who you are as a Christian. And I'd even say like not just you, but also your husband and your family, because that was a sacrifice that you guys all made to one degree or another. So yeah, so that there's that. Another thing that happened at Bullock at the very end, we had like a big ruck march to our final exercise, and about 2/3 of the way through, like you basically tore your calf muscle in half or something like that. And
yeah. Like every muscle from my knee down was torn from either a grade 2, grade 3, almost a complete rupture.
Yeah, and like. And I remember seeing like the pain on your face because you're actually like on the other side of the road of me, about like in the same area. And like the leaders were trying to get you to like go see a doctor and quit. And you're like, no, I'm going to finish this thing. I've gone this far. This thing isn't going to get in the way. And you like hobbled the last like 2 miles or so, like with like, and I could see the pain on your face. And then they tried to get you to leave when we were there. And you're like, no, I'm still going to do this. I'm going to graduate. You had this like, dude, I'm not going to quit attitude, and you could throw anything you want at me, but no, like I'm not going to quit. And I've seen people quit for way less on a lot of different things. And so where does this like tenacity that you have, this discipline, this drive to do things like carrying a baby for somebody else to the ruck march type thing that we just talked about, where does that come from? And like, how has that always been a part of who you are? Or yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that I would say that yes, in some way in my life, the drive to not quit has been present. It has not always been present in a healthy way.
Okay.
The downside to having a drive that is I'm not going to quit means that sometimes you stay in relationships you shouldn't stay in because I'm not going to quit. Sometimes it means you stay in jobs that undervalue you and basically disrespect you because I just can't quit. So it's not always a healthy thing. And I would say at my worst, it left me in some pretty bad situations throughout my life. But at my best, right? That drive, I think I've thought about where does it come from? How did I get it? I don't know. I was raised in a divorced family. My dad and my mom divorced by the time I was 4, right? That was finalized, which means it was pretty much however long divorces take, right? It
Right.
probably by the time I was born, I was probably one of those babies that was like, let's see if another baby will work. Um,
Yeah.
uh, but they were divorced, and so I was raised by a single mom. Eventually, she remarried, but we never had any status. So I was raised and in poverty. Um, I tell people I remember as a kid going and standing in government cheese lines. I remember dumpster diving. Like these are things like this was the normal for my life, and so I don't know if that has something to do with it. I think it does. I think when you're raised in a space of having to fight for yourself, you
Hmm.
you get that, right. And I mean, on top of that, I was raised in a faith tradition that uh, didn't affirm who I am or what I do.
Hmm.
And so that also, right. So throughout my entire life, there was always this pressure of, this is who you feel you're supposed to be, or this is who you feel God's called you to be, but you're wrong,
Hmm.
right? So I've had to always, and not always, but as a kid and growing up in those formative years, it was a struggle to really understand who I was, who God called me to be, and um, and so I think that has something to do with it. I
Hmm.
mean, beyond that, I would say I take seriously, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I also don't want to be the person, like, if I haven't given everything to it, then I will walk away feeling like I could have given more,
Right.
and then I'll regret it.
Yeah.
So, the incident that you were talking about, it wasn't an extra 2 miles. It was, it was only like a half a mile,
Oh,
and
but okay.
yeah, it was only like a half a mile. But I in that moment, it was painful.
Hmm.
I I I didn't want to go home.
Right.
I didn't want to go home having not accomplished what I came there to accomplish.
Hmm.
And so I sucked it up. And I'm known to say, suck it up, buttercup, right? Like,
Hmm.
it's pain. It'll go away. And,
Right.
and so I don't know, this tenacity is a word that I've only recently come to put on myself,
Hmm.
or to accept as a label.
Hmm.
And I think it's appropriate, but I struggle every single day to try to see it in a positive way,
Mm.
um, than instead of a negative way, right?
Yeah.
Instead of, oh, well, you're tenacious. That means you're also loud, obnoxious, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
all these other kind of
Yeah.
things.
So
But I try not to be.
yeah, I don't think you are those things. And like I never thought about the negative connotations that that word could have, but as soon as you said, I'm like, oh, I could see how someone could see that as a negative thing. But I guess in my usage of it for you is really that you are a person that, like, when obstacles come, I see you as a person that says that this obstacle is not going to stand in my way, and I'm going to find a way to either break through it, go around it, overcome somehow.
Yeah.
And I see that as a valuable thing. And I think that's a huge praise. I don't tell a lot of people that they're tenacious, but I think that's something that we need more of in the world, in all of us. And that's not to say that when you're going through hard times, like, I saw the pain on your face on that thing, and I'm like, dude, I don't know how she's doing that, type thing with the ruck march. Um, it's not to say that you weren't going through pain, or that you're saying that the situation isn't real, but that you are choosing to go through this situation as a conqueror as opposed to being conquered, if you will. So, but yeah.
I think if I had to think about what that context of that, I I'm somebody who, again, I take seriously, right, the promises of God, right? So I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. The Psalms over and over tell us that God can move mountains, right?
Right.
And so either He's going to move that mountain in front of me, or He's going to
Mhm.
provide a passage through it. And sometimes He just blows it up, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
so that I can just go straight through it. And I think we oftentimes don't. I'm really good in practical faith,
Hmm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I, I'm really good at like, I want to, I want to go out and do what you're telling me to do.
Right.
And it is so scary in the middle of it. I actually, I don't know if we should talk about one of the other things that we did, but I have a tattoo that says
Right.
fearless.
Yeah.
And so I have a tattoo that says fearless. And I didn't put that on me because I don't have fear.
Uh-huh.
I put it on me to remind me to be fearless, right? And I have some irrational fears in my life, and I have some very rational fears in my life. But I think what I have learned as I have gotten older is that fear is only, it's never not there, right? It's always there. And the only way that we conquer it is to address it and to embrace it. And so, and that means embracing all of it, embracing the pain, embracing the trauma, embracing the full story. I'm someone who loves storytelling and semiotics and all of that type of stuff. So it's this embracing of the life in front of us, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the really ugly of it.
Yeah. No, I totally hear that. I tell my kids, myself, and others all the time that fear is an emotion, and it's not good or bad. It's what we do with it. It's a tool that helps us, just like all emotions, really. It's a tool to help us navigate the world that we're in and the things that we're interacting with. And so, like, what do we do with it? Do we let the emotion control us, or do we use the emotion to encounter the world the way that God intends us to encounter the world? So, yeah. And so you mentioned tattoos. Yeah. A couple of us went down and got tattoos at Born Again Tattoo in Columbia, South Carolina. So if you're watching this and you're going to be a chaplain, you want to get a tattoo while you're down there. Sushil is a really cool guy, and so he's probably not going to even see this, but we're going to name drop him anyways. So I still keep in contact with him on Instagram and everything. But so speaking of social media, I see you all the time doing some really cool stuff as a chaplain and even as a pastor. Doing really cool stuff. And so what are some things that you really enjoy about being a lead pastor? What are some things that you enjoy about being a chaplain?
So in my personal story, I have always had this draw to both the church and Parachurch, what we would call Parachurch ministries. And so I've been in both worlds my entire ministry experience. And what I love about the church, in the way that I see the church, is it's not my job to pastor these people and tell them everything they need to know. It's my job to live in community with them, and to be a reference and to be a light and to be a guide in the middle of that, a caregiver in the middle of that. Maybe even a little bit of a knowledge dispenser, although I tell you, don't believe most of what I say. It's my job to walk with them and to show them how to do life, much like Jesus did. And so the beauty of the church in the way that I see church is that I get to equip these people. I'm equipping the saints to go outside of these doors and do what is real ministry. I don't see the working in the church. Like my job as a pastor isn't necessarily my ministry. It is when I'm in the gutters with my congregation members. It is when we're in the depth of that life, when we're embracing that life together. But what I do on a Sunday morning, I don't see that as ministry. It is, but it's not the same as.
It's not the ministry. It's a small portion of a much broader ministry.
Right. So my job then in the pastoral world is to equip people to go out, which then means we're doing a lot of going out, right? We're out in the world, doing everything that we're charged to do, right? Clothing the naked, feeding the poor, doing all of God, caring for the widow, doing all of those things that we're supposed to do on the church side. What I love about being an Army chaplain is the reality that you are invited into these sacred spaces. And the and the cool thing about it is that people don't even know they're sacred spaces.
Right.
And so you're invited into moments where um, hey chaplain, my wife's having a baby. Can you come over and pray? Our baby's ill. Or hey chaplain, my mom died. Like,
Mhm.
oh, you're there. All the different scenarios that you get
Right.
phone calls for, and there's this entering into um, something that is sacred and holy and
Mhm.
organic, and this opportunity to pour into people. Not that I have something that they don't have, but because I don't. But it's this walking alongside in the midst of struggle and in the midst of pain,
Mhm.
and and being that person that comes alongside and says, you can do this,
Yeah.
right? Like, come on, we got this. You can go that extra 10 feet. You can make it to that pole.
Mhm.
You can make it to this next goal, and I'm going to help you get
Yeah.
there. Both of that, my ministry has been about
Mhm.
that, right? Helping people become who God has called them to be.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. It's like, go that extra distance, we can get to that next pole. And again, that kind of reminds me of like some of the things I've seen you go through. Like, it's not that you're just telling people that they can do it, but you've lived it out in your own life in a lot of different ways, both probably internally and externally, where where it's on display for people to see. And I think that's one of the things that drew me to you in our classroom setting when we got to know each other is like you wear that on your sleeve, and you're wearing it on your sleeve in such a way that you're not like trying to be the center of attention, or like I'm like in a prideful way, but like it's there in a humble way of saying like um yeah, it's like an encouragement, I guess, is kind of what I'm trying to say. It's like, okay, here's a person that can do it and has done it. I can do it too, kind of a way, in a very humbling way. So I've really enjoyed that in our relationship and being friends and getting to see that. So kudos on you for all that. So very cool. Yeah. So maybe if at the end we'll have ways that people can like connect with you and all that kind of stuff. But if there's people that are interested in becoming chaplain or and want to kind of hear what it's like from the reserve side, would people be okay to talk to you about what that looks like?
Oh yeah. Oh sure. You know what? And I actually want to, while we're talking about that for 2 seconds, my struggle in the church world. I have been at coming into adulthood. I found my way into a denomination and a faith tradition that affirmed and called women.
Mhm.
But that just because they, on paper and in manual affirmed and called women didn't mean that they actually did, right? Each individual within an entity has the ability to have their own beliefs.
Right.
And so I struggled a great deal, both in the denomination that raised me up into pastorhood,
Mhm.
and then also even in the denomination that I'm in now, although it's infinitely better. Um, what I love about being an Army chaplain,
Mhm.
and some may call me naive, is 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 that um, the very things that I had to fight for in the church, to have a voice,
Mhm.
to have a space, to be able to serve, to be in the depths with
Mhm.
people in the Army. I haven't had that struggle.
Oh, okay, cool.
The place, now that doesn't mean I haven't had somebody tell me, hey, this is my pulpit, can't have it. I, I have learned when to fight my battles,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
And that's not one of them. As I've already said, I much rather be out than
Mhm.
in the pulpit. So I'm like, great,
Yeah.
let's go find something else to do. But for women who are interested,
Mhm.
I will talk all day long with you about what it looks like to be in ministry and to follow your call that God has put on you,
Mhm.
and and do that through the Army, because I think it's a totally viable
Yeah.
place to live out the call.
Definitely. And I think I think one, it's a viable place to do it. I think it's a very rewarding place to do it. And honestly, as the Army is becoming more diverse in the last 20 years, in the 90s or in the 80s, it was like mostly males, but we're seeing more and more females in the military. And I think there's there's a place for a very needed, I want to make sure I say it the right way. We need women chaplains in the military. And I would say not just for our women soldiers, but even for our men soldiers as well. I think there's a place for, I think oftentimes we automatically think, oh, we need women chaplains because we have women soldiers. I think that's kind of bad thinking. Because I think a woman pastor can also pastor a male soldier and vice versa. But there's a place and there's a need for it. There's a voice that needs to be heard that is missing if it's not there. So
yeah. So I'm okay. I'm okay with if the argument that will get someone to listen is we need more women chaplains because we have more female soldiers. Mm-hmm. Okay, if that's the argument you need, I'll give you that argument all day long. But I could spend hours talking about all the ways in which female chaplains have the ability to work in ways that male chaplains just can't. And that's for male soldiers or female soldiers.
Right. So. Yeah, definitely. So, we kind of moved into where my next question was going to lead. I think in a lot of ways, at least in the ministry world, both in church ministry and in the chaplain corps, and in the Army, you've kind of broke that proverbial glass ceiling. And because you're out front and you're leading in what, historically and traditionally have maybe been male roles. What are some challenges that you face in ministry, or maybe what are some of the difficulties that you faced in your positions that you've been in?
Typically, the difficulties that I have are surrounding my gender. Again, I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, being in a denomination where in the manual, in the book, in the good book, this is what we do. But being in an area, because this is where I would say I'm definitely in the Midwest. We have a lot of Midwest ideologies within our faith traditions here in the Toledo, Ohio area, actually all of Ohio. But so we're a little backwards in some things. And so I struggled for years, right? Being told, well, you're going to have to, if you want to be a pastor, there's these courses. You can just have these other pastors mentor you and we'll give you a license. But we really don't think that's appropriate for you. You should go to school. And so you should go take on thousands and thousands of dollars of debt because we need to make sure that you have even more than what they have if you think we're going to actually do something. And so then you actually go get that degree and then be told, oh, well, no, that wasn't enough. This degree is way above and beyond what any other male has, but that it's still not enough. Now go get another degree. And then at the end of that degree, only to be told, well, you know what? No, we're just not sure. And all of that coming back to, just so that you don't think that I'm crazy and that it's just about me. All of that coming back to, it did come back to the fact that I'm a female. I'm a female that is, I'm going to go back and use some words that I used earlier, can be loud, can be obnoxious, can be tenacious, and being in an unhealthy environment in which the people in leadership use those words in negative ways.
Yeah.
Right. Use those words in ways of these are not good qualities to have. As a female, you should be quiet. You should be very demure, right? And the heels that you're wearing are far too high. I wear 6-inch heels, but being in that was in my ministry has been my biggest struggle, was coming up against that. And I can't tell you how many times I wanted to quit. I can't tell you how many times I was broken on the floor, literally, right? Like I've done everything, God, that you've asked me to do. I even spent my first master's because, again, earlier I meant I was raised in a tradition, a fundamentalist tradition in which it wasn't just, no, you can't be a pastor. No, you can't be a missionary. No, you can't be called into ministry. It was, and because you feel that's what God's telling you, you're obviously not hearing from God. right? So I have a lot of my own history and story that I have to overcome to get to be what God was calling me to be. And then to find myself in a place where people were just affirming that history was difficult.
Right.
And eventually I left that place and entered into. So what I want to tell you about is, and going back to the very beginning, where that tenaciousness, right, that lack of quitting, that kept me in that denomination for 11 years, in a very abusive. I mean, literally, I wrote a poem called "Battered," and it was about being a battered wife. But I'm not a battered wife. It wasn't about my husband. It was about the church.
I think you actually shared that with me at Bullock, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I did it in a open mic we did.
Yeah, that's right.
And so anyways, here's how I found to make my way through it. The only way that I would have made it through it. It might work for somebody else. It might not. I sought out when the pastors, when the leaders that were around me, that were in my church, that were in my district, that were everywhere around me, I sought out other people. I went out and I said, okay, I feel like this is what God's calling me to. I can't explain the depths of it. I don't understand all of it. And then for a long time, I rejected it. But I need to find people who lift me up. I need to find people who encourage me and give life to me, not drain me. And I didn't, in the time that I was doing that, I didn't necessarily think in my head, let me go find other people to pour into me. What I did was I started looking at, well, God's word tells us that we're supposed to be feeding the poor, that feeding the hungry. God's word tells us that we're supposed to be clothing the naked. And I'm looking around inside of the church and none of that is happening.
Yeah.
Right? So I began to find myself being drawn to people, to leaders that were actually out there doing that. And the funny thing is, the leaders that were actually out there doing that are the very leaders that were able to come underneath me and say, Sharon, there's something inside of you that God is doing, and we're going to lift you up. Right. And it just so happens that some of those, actually all of them, were male mentors in my life that took a place of humility, that bore that cross, that as they listened to my story, right, they didn't go, oh, well, you're crazy. They went, we've seen it. We see you. And we're sorry, right? They took on this humble heart of, let us apologize for every single person in your life that has told you you are not worthy of your call, right? And so those men, I mean, I can totally name drop who they are: Don Cheever, Dan Rogers, Charles Allen, right? There are just men who came alongside, men of every different type of diversity, socioeconomic status, that were living out ministry. Daryl McLaren's another one. And came up and just basically said, we see God in you, and we will do anything for you to not quit, for you to keep pushing forward. And so in ministry, as a woman, you have to find those people that are sitting outside of the circles, and allow them to pour into you. Not to say that females didn't. I have wonderful female friends. I don't have tons of female friends that are also in ministry. I know many of them, and I have some that are friends, but the majority of us quit. The majority of us basically go, well, wait, maybe it is just children I'm supposed to be ministering to, or maybe I am supposed to just be singing in the choir or the worship team. And we don't have those people who come alongside. So in my, I just did a Girls on the Run race with some of the girls in my congregation, little girls.
I saw that. Yeah.
So part of what I do, even I did some time working with human trafficking, about 7 years, working with Lucas County Human Trafficking Coalition, where all I did was go out and educate teenagers about, right? And I'm not called. I have children. I am not called to children. There's a difference. But I take every opportunity I can to pour into little girls, to tell them that they can be exactly who God has called them to be. And I think it takes having those people in your life that can do that.
Right.
And so as an adult in ministry, it's about seeking out. In the Army, I haven't experienced the Army too much. I've never experienced on the active side. It's only been on the reserve side. And something I learned within the church world was networking. And everybody, even in the church world, told me, "Oh, you don't need to go to that. It's just a networking thing." And I really hated networking. I hated going to church events, and I feel like it's just a contest, and I can't say what kind of contest I want to say, but you probably know what kind of contest I want to say, right? My church is bigger than yours. I have more attendance. We do it this way. You do it that way, right? Who's better than the other? And I really have no time in my life for any of that.
Right.
So another part of what helped me was that even though that wasn't something I wanted to do or be a part of, I still had to force myself to be present to it.
Right.
And I would say where I would translate that into the Army is I've heard people say, well, hey, don't worry about your promotions, or, it'll just happen, or don't worry about, getting to know other people. And that type of stuff speaks against everything that I am, right? I'm a people person 100%. So if I come into a new unit, it is my job to know my commander, right? So the first thing I want to do is get to know who my commander is and establish that relationship. And then subsequently with every single soldier after that, right? But that's all networking. Right. And so the biggest network, ladies, you may say, like, I fought against it because one, I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want to be in this room where everybody else is male and most everybody else is male. And I have to have this contest with them. I don't want to just be in the room. Don't have a contest with them. And it tends to frustrate them. Just saying. But being willing to advocate for yourself is something that I had to learn. And being willing to say, I know who I am. I know whose I am. I know what my call is, and I know what my job is. And I'm going to walk in those things in confidence, not in my own confidence, but in the confidence of God. Right? Like those, I know who I am. Right. And to be fair, to be absolutely fair to the denomination that raised me up. Through much of that walk, I didn't know who I was. I didn't trust. Maybe I knew, but I didn't trust who I was. And in fact, it took an example of that. My first preaching was, I live in Ohio. A classmate, I was attending Northwest Nazarene University. I was getting my pastoral ministry, Master's of Arts in Pastoral Ministry. I was on this path to become a pastor, and I was telling God the whole time, I'm not going to be a pastor. I can't do this. Women don't preach, and women don't speak over men. They don't lead men. Like I was letting myself look in the mirror and parrot back to myself everything that I heard growing up. And my church at that time refused to let me in the pulpit. I could lead Bible studies where I had women coming in the 50s and 60s, quantity of people. I could lead Bible studies even if men came, Sunday school classes. I could do everything else. I just could not be in the pulpit. And so one of my friends, same denomination, but lived in Virginia, his name was Lonnie Wilkerson. He said, Sharon, come down. I'm going to buy you a plane ticket. You're going to get in that pulpit and you're going to preach. And it scared me. Like, your thing, right? It was way easier to just hide, right? And so I did it, and I went down. And my first preaching experience, I stood up in his pulpit, and I manuscripted it. Because when I'm fearful, I tend to want to control. And so manuscript felt really good because I know exactly what I'm going to say. And I manuscripted it, and I sat up there the whole time like this,
Uh-huh.
legs shaking. Good thing there was a pulpit. Like I was just shaking.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't until I sat down in the front row, and I very clearly remember hearing God say to me, "Do you see? This isn't about you.
Right.
It's about me. It's not
Mm-hmm.
about what you want or what you say or who you say you are. It's about who I say you are." And
Right.
in that moment, I was literally bawling my eyes out, right? Because, like I said, there were moments that I didn't
Mm-hmm.
accept or embrace or acknowledge what God was doing inside of me. And I came up with, so I have a whale cup. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's my Jonah cup. Because I tend to be a little bit like Jonah.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I can be a little
Yeah.
bit like Jonah, but God is faithful and He provides over and over ways of salvation. He provides whales
Yeah.
in my life, and Lonnie, my friend, that he was one of those whales, right? His offering of his pulpit and his space, and saying, "You have to do this. You have to, you have to allow God to do it." That's all. That's
Yeah.
all. The salvation of the whale, right, brought through
Yeah.
people.
You know, I think the story that you're kind of talking about, I think oftentimes we have a calling, a lot of people do. Um, and whether you're male or female, we have these callings and these dreams that I think God's given us oftentimes. And whether it be life circumstances or people like abusive relationships or just naysayers, I think oftentimes we don't actually fulfill what our calling or our dream is because we allowed those voices, whether, and sometimes it's even internal, right, to hold us back. And I think what you kind of were alluding to is, one is like, it's a struggle, like, and I think it is for a lot of people as they go through life. But you have to find the people that are going to be cheerleaders for you, because in general in the world you don't have a whole lot of cheerleaders. The world kind of has a tendency to like beat people down, no matter who they are or what they're going through. And I think if you want to be successful, and when I say successful, I don't mean like make lots of money, but like fulfill your calling and your dream, is you need to find those that have already gone before you that can cheerlead you on along the way. I like to use that term because like it reminds me of Hebrews. Says that we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses cheering us on, and look to the finish line, and like Jesus is there, and it just like it's an actual race. They're cheering for you, and one person cheering for you can overcome 100 people that are saying that you can't do it. So yeah, so that kind of brings me to my next question. You I guess when it comes to like women and leadership, whether it be in the pastoral realm, in the military, or just in life in general, like how can guys be better teammates and cheerleaders for the women in our lives?
Um, I can only tell you
Hmm.
how the men in my life have worked, and I've talked about a few of them already in the ways in which they took a humble nature
Hmm.
and basically step back. Now that doesn't mean that I would say that all of them are coworkers with me, right? They it doesn't mean that they were like, oh, we'll let her just have her thing. But in the moments when it was necessary and needed, they they did the whole we're okay. I mean, like how like we just want to love you. And then in other moments, so it's those same people who have said some of the harshest, meanest things to me in the moment, right?
Uh-huh.
that I step back and go, crap.
Yeah.
So I love them well, but I want to so I want to take a minute
Hmm.
because those were men who affirmed women in ministry,
Hmm.
and I'm not somebody who expects or demands
Hmm.
that anyone affirm my ministry. My affirmation of my ministry comes from the person who gave me the call in the first place, right? It comes from God. And so I'm not someone who's like, well,
Hmm.
you must see me and acknowledge me and you must give me that's not me at all.
Hmm.
So I want to talk about somebody else in my life who absolutely did not affirm women
Hmm.
and how it is that they came alongside me. And so that person's my grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
He passed away years ago, but he was somebody that throughout my life, the only male that was there from birth to his death,
Mm-hmm.
um, literally the only one that was always present. He was the one that, as a little girl, he was making sure I was going to Awana, and he was making sure that I was memorizing my Bible verses, and he was making sure that I was singing. Like, he was the person that was my faith giant.
Uh-huh.
But he was also the person that believed you can't be a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
He actually even believed I probably shouldn't have been leading any kind of Sunday schools, right? Because unless it was just for women or just for children. And so throughout my life, he did everything to show me God, right? Everything he could. He was an evangelist at heart. It's just what he was, not a pastor ever, but he was definitely an evangelist, and he taught me how to love people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that he actually knew that he was teaching me that, right? So as I got older, he, in the moments when I was not a very good girl, because those moments are there.
Yep.
There's a whole nother video, maybe 3. But in those moments, he was the person who loved me unconditionally.
Mm-hmm.
He, like, no matter how far I had gotten from where, he believed, wow, I was Sherry. Sherry's so far from God right now, right? No matter how far I got from God, he never stopped saying, like, come home, right?
Right.
And so flash forward to older, he's older, a lot older. And he didn't, and when I began to go to school, and I began to say, this is what I'm going to pursue, he was excited for me, terrified because he didn't understand any of it, but he was excited that I was pursuing God. So as someone who can't affirm women, be excited that they're pursuing God, right? At the very least, how can I help you pursue God? What can I do, right? But then also taking a humble stance of you, and you don't have to believe like me, right? I don't demand. I have a great friend that, anyways, I have a great friend who definitely doesn't believe in women in ministry at all. And it took about 3 months, but we became great friends, and great co-workers in the faith. But it took. I'm not trying to change you. My goal is not to make you affirm me. Please don't try to change me, right? And so that's the other thing, right? If you're one of those males that have a hard time, we believe as people of faith. I'm going to limit this to people of faith, right? If we believe as people of faith that people are created in the image of God, right? So God manifests in each and every one of us. So if you're someone who can't affirm women in ministry, just affirm God in them.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you what happened with my grandfather. When I began preaching at home, my grandfather was in the second row in his fancy little suits every single time. He left his home church that I, in my entire life, watched him go to, and he would never miss a Sunday. And he would come and he would sit and he would listen to me preach. He didn't agree with me up there, but whatever with it, and maybe I got some of my tenacity from him. I don't know, probably. But he came and he listened. We'd go out to lunch. Sometimes we talk about what I talked about, because there's another difference. He's pretty Calvinist and I'm pretty Wesleyan. So there's a whole nother conversation to have about what I was talking about. And so he would come and he would be a participant in that. And he would, eventually I got to actually type out, he trusted me to type out all of his life's works of things. And we got to have wonderful, great conversations. And it was, my grandmother had a stroke. And my uncle called and said, Sherry, get to the hospital. And we sat in that hospital room. My grandfather was 94,
Mm-hmm.
and he died at 96. He had a brain the entire time. Like, in no way did he ever lose. I mean, witty, smart, fast thinking. He was an inventor. It was amazing man.
Mm-hmm.
And a nurse came in. In fact, it was the same nurse like 10 times. And every time she came in the room, my grandfather was sitting next to me, and I, had my arm around him, and we acknowledged that this wasn't going to kill my grandmother, but what was going to come out of her stroke was going to end up killing him.
Mm-hmm.
And he 10 times to the same exact nurse, have I introduced you to my granddaughter, Sherry? She's one of those women preachers. I don't agree with that. I don't really like it. It's not what I believe in. And then he would pause, but I cannot deny God in her.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what to do with that. And so I'm just going to love her. And so my encouragement is, if you are one of those people
mm-hmm.
who cannot, whether we're talking about women in ministry or we're talking about someone who doesn't have the same faith beliefs as you, maybe not even the same God as you, can you look at them
Mm-hmm.
and see that image of God and say, if nothing else, I'm going to look at that and I'm going to love that and I'm going to call that forward. And that's what you can do, right?
Yeah. I think that's beautiful. Like, your grandfather sounds like an amazing man, and I can't wait to get to meet him in the hereafter. And but no, I think that's true. Like, I think we have the natural tendency as people to kind of look at the things that we disagree with and latch onto that, and then we dehumanize the other because we don't agree with whatever the thing is. But I think you hit something that's really essential, and this, like you said, it's not just women in leadership, but I think this could be something that can be applied to all people in all situations. What are the things that we can latch onto that we do agree with or that we do value in the person? And like you said, call that stuff forward. And I think fundamentally as Christians, it's, this is someone that's created in the image of God. But, in the workplace, it could be, this is a person that is really good at doing this thing, whatever it is. Let's focus on that, not their gender or not their race or not their religion. I think that's pretty powerful, is latching onto that thing, whatever that is for us as an individual. What is it that we can value in this person, or what trait do they have that is like that we think is paramount? How can we call that forward? And I think that's pretty powerful, definitely. Yeah. I'm just thinking of your story. That's very beautiful. Because like your grandfather said, like, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah. He also, what's interesting, one of the other things that he taught me was that space of humility. And he carried it through actually, he didn't. I take that back. When I was young, he knew what he knew, right? This is what I know, and this is it, and it's the only way, and blah, blah, blah. And there's a lot of what caused damage in my life. But I think part of what brought healing in my life is watching my grandfather's hands go from like this to slowly begin to open up. Right. And to take what he thought he knew was right and hold it in a way like, search me, oh God.
Yeah.
Right? It's really true. And again, that's that wrestling. And I think some of the most important times in my life as I was older, I needed to watch him wrestle. He wrestled with me, right? I became that thorn in his side in many ways throughout my life. But he wrestled with my call. He wrestled with things like KJV or NIV or NLT, or right. He wrestled.
Those are Bible translations for those that know.
He wrestled with all those things, and some of the things he never really let go of the firmness. But some of them, like I said, but for me, it came down to God, right? So again, let me speak to women in this moment. If you are being faithful to your call, whether that is a call as a mother, as a banker, as a minister, as a teacher, no matter what that call is, if you are being faithful to it, people will see God in you.
Yeah.
People will. And it's hard and it's painful and it's a struggle. And there are days that you will want to curl up on the floor in the fetal position and just quit. And there are days that you might even feel like you want to just die.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to I promise you that if you are faithful to the call of God in your life, people will have no other choice but to step back and go, holy crap, that's God.
Yeah.
And I can't deny it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's pretty powerful. For sure. I think as a, I tend to look up here when I'm thinking, sorry. I think, there's some powerful, like tips or advice. I don't know if that's the right term, but like as people that are in positions of power or influence or leadership, one is that humbly, like I use that illustration all the time, is like you can grasp onto whatever your idea is, like so tight and white knuckle it, and or you can hold it loosely but still hold it, right? And I think that's where those that like clench, you're not a learner, and like you could be holding on to something that's wrong. But if you hold it loosely, doesn't mean you're letting go. It means that you're allowing yourself to like be challenged and to like, okay, is what I believe correct? Can I allow it to be changed? If your ideas are true and accurate, then they can be addressed, and you can dialogue with it. And if it holds up, it holds up. If it doesn't, then maybe let go. That's just in general, but I think with some of the things that we're talking about, that's just as true. Yeah.
Well, I mean, even think about, take the imagery, that imagery. I use the same imagery, but if I put a seed in or let's say a flower in my hand,
Mm-hmm.
And I hold it like that, I'm going to crush it,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to damage it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I begin to let it open up, I actually have the opportunity to let it bloom and to grow.
Right.
And so, even again, if it's true, if it's right, if it's just, whether my hand is opened or closed, it's the same is going to happen, right? What is true and just will actually bloom, unless I'm squeezing it, because I have that power. I have that power to, as human beings, God has, I like to use the word co-laborers, but again, a whole, or even co-creators, even more.
Yeah.
That we have the ability to come alongside, and while we, can't create human beings in the sense that God did, we have the ability to create. And one of my favorite people is Abraham Joshua Heschel. And he's a Jewish rabbi. And he said that words create worlds.
Mm. Yeah.
Right. And so we have the ability to come alongside the God of the universe and create with our words, with our actions, with our body language, right? With everything that we know that causes a spark within our world. We have the ability to do that. And so how do we do that in a way that honors God, that honors, even honors humanity?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, Sharon, I just wanted to say thank you for coming on today, and we're going to be wrapping stuff up. I have to go get ready for a ruck march. It's pretty early here on this side of the world. But before I do, is there, we've talked a lot about some different tips and advice, but is there anything else that you wanted to share that we didn't cover, or any resources that you think people should check out in this dialogue of things that we talked about? Yeah.
Well, so one of the females that's been, that was in my life that came alongside and did some great mentorship and discipleship for me is a woman named Jo Saxton. Mm-hmm. She's a great leader. JoSaxton.com. I had the opportunity to do one-on-one discipleship with her years ago. And one of the books for females who are, and even actually males too could read it. It's a pretty book. But it's called More Than Enchanting, Breaking Through the Barriers to Influence Your World. she wrote this book years ago. It's been republished again because of its popularity. But I would encourage women to pick it up, read it in a small group, read it alone. It's really set up in a way that you could put it in a small group setting.
Mm-hmm.
But it talks a lot about how is it that we break through, right? You talk about the proverbial glass ceiling. It's not so much about that, but this is a Christian author who is writing to females and helping them to embrace their calling, their giftings, the ways in which God's called them to serve. So I would recommend that book to anyone, no matter what your call is, right?
Right.
It's just about embracing who you are and whose you are.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Well, thank you. I'll definitely put that in the notes. I'll link to her website as well. And lastly, is there how can people connect with you if they want to connect with you or follow you in the social digital realm?
Well, so the easiest way is just Instagram, and it's Shut Up Sharon. If you just start typing in Shut Up Sharon, it'll come up.
Okay.
But I think it's whatever the little @ symbol is.
Yeah.
The technical word for that.
Yeah. Aspartame? No, that's the stuff that's in your diet.
That goes in your bad sugar. Don't drink it. Don't do it. But I think it's Shut Up _Sharon is the best way to catch me. And if you follow me, you might get fitness videos. You might get odd ramblings. I can't promise it's going to be good.
Cool. Well, I just want to say thank you for this time. It's been awesome getting to catch up with you. I miss doing ministry with you. I guess we still are doing ministry together because this is kind of a form of ministry and all that stuff. But I just want to say I value you as an individual, as a person, as a co-laborer in Christ, and thank you for being an encouragement in my life. And I just want to say, keep on fighting the good fight. You're doing an awesome job. And so thank you for joining us today.
Keep on getting tattoos.
Oh, yeah.
You're running out of space. But
I had one that I was supposed to get for my birthday, which was March 18th. A friend was going to surprise me, but everything went on shutdown like 3 days beforehand. And so I was supposed to have another one there. And then I have a deposit on another one that I'm supposed to be getting. So, I'm running out of space, but so.
It's okay. A side note, you might want to research this, but now when people die, they're tanning their tattooed skins and hanging it on walls. So maybe your wife will be into that. I'm not sure, but you should check it out.
I know, right? This is my husband's skin. No. Yeah, but okay. Yeah. Well,
but it's been great talking to you.
Yes, definitely. And tell your family I said hi and your soldiers and all that good stuff. Anyways, have a good one. Hey, thank you all for tuning in to Tattooed Chap. And please comment below with any thoughts or comments that you have. And we'll see you guys next time. Have a great one. Bye. So everybody, thank you for tuning in today. Hopefully you got some good stuff out of that. Make sure to check the notes below for some of the resources that we mentioned. Also, comment. Let us know what your thoughts are on today's interview. Make sure to like and share. Hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so that way you're reminded when we have future episodes coming out. We'll see you guys next time. God bless and bye.